Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to another Dad Mods video. Today we're going to be discussing the Quickjacks, particularly the SLX 5000s, which are what I own. Now, first, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. We cover a lot of topics here. We build a lot of cool stuff. I've got a 70-some-year-old Ford that's on air suspension. I've got a track Camaro that is a build in progress. I've built go-karts, I've built shop-related stuff. I've got tons of really informational videos and a lot of fun content. So consider subscribing for those reasons and all of the cool things that are yet to come. Alright, so I have had the Quickjacks for roughly 2 years, and in that time I've used it to lift a 1950 Ford Custom, which is roughly a 3,500 pound car. That is a full frame car. I have a 1999 Camaro Z28. I've used that. I've lifted on that numerous times successfully. I've also built a platform, which make sure to check out that video. I built a platform for lifting motorcycles on it, and it works amazing for that. And that video has been very popular, so consider checking that one out too. So in the years that I have owned this, I have lifted both unibody and framed vehicles. I have found a couple of very important points that I want to hit on quite a bit here today. And we're going to talk specifically about Quickjack placement and why that is so important. If we're looking at parallel placement of them, you have to think about that. These Quickjacks only have so much movement in the pads that sit on top of the frames. And those pads are intended to hit the lifting points on your vehicle. Now, most vehicles don't have perfectly parallel lifting points on them. So that is something to consider. When it comes time to lift up a vehicle, that's something that you're going to notice is that the frames themselves might not be sitting at the exact same distance from one another. Now, you want to make sure that you get them as close as absolutely possible. In fact, I go as far as the first time that I'm lifting a vehicle, I will actually take out tape measures and I will measure the distance of the front and the back of the Quickjack's frames to see if they are within a certain amount of wiggle room. Generally speaking, I try and get them within a couple of inches of one another. You can compensate again with those pads that are on the frames. So it's not the end of the world if you're finding that the pad placement isn't exactly parallel as well, because it is all about the frames. And why that is very important is the way that these frames behave when you're lifting a vehicle. So that the way that these frames lift is that they'll be placed on top of each other and the frame will actually go up and forward at the same time. What that can result in is if you don't have frames that are perfectly parallel or damn close, they will actually start moving in that direction, and it may narrow or widen the distance between the two frames. So what that can result in is forces being placed upon the base of the Quickjacks, wanting them to become wonky, making them potentially slide a little bit and move around, or worst case scenario, they may start to feel like they're going to tip. They may actually tip a little bit. So that's a scary, high-risk scenario in that you want to make sure that these things are as close to parallel as absolutely possible. When you are thinking about purchasing a set of Quickjacks, it's really important to remember this characteristic, that these two pieces are separate from one another and they need to be parallel. Now, when you are looking at the underside of your vehicle, look at the location, measure the distance between the two lifting points. Say you're you're measuring the two front locations, measure the distance between it. Locate the rear two lift points, measure the distance between them. And then you can kind of compare and see whether or not you're going to have enough wiggle room in the Quickjack's frames themselves to allow them to still be parallel, but adequately lift and touch those important lift points of your vehicle. One of the measures that I take when I find that the Quickjack frames aren't perfectly parallel from one another is that I'll choose to only lift it up to the first lock setting. There's 2 lock settings, and when you bring them all the way up, to the second one, you'll find that that's the peak point where it tips forward the most, meaning that it is traveling on that plane, sort of the direction that that Quickjack's frame is pointing. So if you think about it, if they're pointing ever so slightly inward towards each other, they're going to travel the most when you reach the second setting on that frame lock. And I find that at that setting, most vehicles' suspension droop is still going to bottom out, and that you'll be able to remove wheels and tires without too many problems. Another thing that's really important is to just test things out before you actually climb underneath the vehicle, because they have fallen. This has happened. People have improperly lifted their vehicles on these, whether that's putting an imbalance of weight between the front and the back, or it is having them not be perfectly parallel, or you're lifting and lowering in a weird way and there's traveling at different speeds and you end up with a tipping vehicle. These things have happened, so it's important to kind of do a few safety checks after you lift the vehicle up. Once you have it on the locks, walk around, take a look at the placement of everything. Consider doing just a little teeny bit of a wiggle on the vehicle to see how it looks. If there's excessive wiggles, drop that thing back down, measure things, make sure they're parallel, all that sort of thing. Now, the next piece that I really want to talk about is about the operation of the Quickjacks. And one of the things that I found, and an error that I made in the process. So, Quickjacks are really meant to be traveling from point A to point B, meaning that they're going from their resting state of the two frames being on top of each other and there being no lift, to being at one of the lock settings on the lift. So going upward, hitting the lock, staying put. Quickjacks are not meant to go up and down without hitting locks in between the traveling from up to the downward motion. What can happen if you are lifting and lowering without setting it at a resting point is that you can end up with the two jacks, the two frames, not going up and down at exactly the same rates. Generally speaking, and from what I've observed, 99.9% of operation of the Quickjacks, I've never noticed a difference between the two frames going up or down differently. The only time that I have noticed a difference was when I did not bring them up to a lock point before going back down and then trying to go back up again. And the problem that it ended up happening is that I started to observe fluid transfer very slowly occurring between one frame to the other. And this is due in part because they did not lock down to a safe location. I ended up having only one lock in place. Alright, so let's talk about the storage options for your Quickjacks. Quickjacks can be mounted to the wall if you have one of the hanging pieces that they sell. It's like a hook that the Quickjacks can be rested on and they'll just hang up there. Or you can choose to have them on the floor in your shop, but you want to consider having a good spot to kind of have them off to the sides so that you don't risk having the quick connect fittings on the hydraulic lines getting covered in dirt and water and stuff like that. Yes, it appears that they're stainless, but even still, you don't really want to risk having those things getting all gunky because this is a connection in a hydraulic system. You don't want any dirt or debris getting in there or making it harder for you to connect the two couplers. So what I do, I have placement underneath a workbench that I slide them under, and often what I'll do if I'm not going to be using them for a while, I'll slide something underneath the frames just to make sure that they're not sitting on a slab that might be sweating or might have any moisture on them, because you want to avoid having any kind of rust issues. One note that I want to throw out, or one little tip, is that I find that every once in a while that these couplers don't actually want to connect. They don't, it's as though like there's a fluid lock or something like that, or pressure is built up in a system and it's not allowing the couplers to latch. What I do is I will cycle the pump just for a split second. I'll just blip it up, or I'll hit the lower button, and usually doing that the first time, I'll be able to hook the couplers back up without any problems. So whatever is happening in there, I've found that that works out to solve that problem. And now I'm sure you guys are wondering, would I recommend the Quickjacks? And the simple answer to that is absolutely. They have been very good to me in these couple of years. I've had consistent performance from them, and they allow me to do a lot of things in my garage without spending a ton of money, and without feeling like I am limited, whether I'm losing shop space or I'm limited in the location in the shop that I'm lifting my vehicle up. So I hope that this has been really helpful for everybody. Whether you're considering purchasing a set of these things, whether you've already got a set and you're just wondering if anybody else has had the same experience, or you've seen my videos and you've seen me use them a million times in them. If you're curious, hopefully this was angled towards you. And if you want to consider a new method or another method for supporting the channel, if you're a prospective purchaser of Quickjacks, go into the link in the description. I will have a link that you can click on, and that will take you to an Amazon listing. If you purchase through that Amazon listing, I will actually get a commission on that sale, and that will go towards supporting the channel. So I would greatly appreciate that. I thank you guys as always for tuning into the videos, and we'll see you on the next one.